If at first you don't succeed, maybe they'll give you some money to try again. Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 bad games that somehow got sequels.
Can do.
For more gaming videos, check out our new spin-off channel, Mojo Plays, for in-depth reviews, thoughtful video essays, detailed character origins, and insightful commentary. Mojo Plays, games smarter. For this list, we're taking a look at the worst games that should never have received sequels, yet, despite all the odds, did.
You can take the blame, but it won't bring her back.
Number 10, Frogger. The original 1981 arcade game? A classic. The 1997 console remake? Yeah, not so much. Sure, the updated graphics and catchy soundtrack helped it stand out, but beyond that, critics and players alike became frustrated with the gameplay mechanics. You know, the thing that actually makes the game fun. Poor controls and a bad camera were made even more frustrating due to each level having a time limit. And it didn't help that later stages became irritatingly difficult. Still, the game sold well enough to garner a sequel in 2000 with Frogger 2: Swampy's Revenge. Thankfully, unlike the first game, the sequel was much more well received. Number 9, Kane and Lynch, Dead Men.
You okay?
Yeah, let's just get this over with. Is he there yet? I can't see him.
He's there, all right.
2007 was a fantastic year for shooters, with releases such as the impressive BioShock and strong outings in existing franchises like Call of Duty and Halo. Unfortunately, not all of them were up to snuff. The story of Kane and Lynch, about two escaped death row inmates, featured strong characters and dialogue. However, everything else sucked. The level design felt empty, the graphics were ugly, and the gameplay was limited to just shoot the enemies, with a lackluster cover system thrown in for good measure. Average reviews and relatively good sales led to Kane and Lynch 2: Dog Days 3 years later. Reviews were just as mixed, if not worse, probably marking the end of this franchise. Number 8, Phantasmagoria. In the mid-90s, games were beginning to feature much more graphic and violent content. Such was the appeal of this PC horror point-and-click adventure. Focusing on a writer who moves into a haunted house, the game featured real actors, which made for some great effects work. It really looks gory when they kill people in this game. But the game seemed to rely solely on this. The storyline had been done to death in every medium, the puzzles were too easy, and the action didn't pick up until about halfway through. Take away the effects and you've got a really boring game. It was visually impressive enough to get a sequel just a year later though, even if Phantasmagoria: A Puzzle of Flesh suffered from the exact same problems.
Hey, Bob. Hey, check it out. Oh, there you are.
Number 7, Final Fantasy XIII.
Get back! I got this one.
One of the most polarizing games in the franchise. There's no denying that the graphics and score are fantastic in number 13. But this wasn't surprising. See how this decades-old franchise has had time to play around with different visuals and ideas. The problems come from the linear nature of the game. Square Enix had created a beautiful world, it was just a shame that we weren't given much of a chance to explore it. The first 10 chapters felt especially empty, and the slow pace in which you learn your different abilities definitely did not help either. All in all, it made for a stunning yet very hollow experience. The underwhelming game would produce an underwhelming trilogy, with 13-2 and Lightning Returns being two sequels that we feel like no one asked for.
No one is gonna stop me. You hear? Not you. Definitely not her.
Number 6, Street Fighter. Unlike most instances of a bad game getting a sequel, the world of video games is actually much better off because Capcom decided to revisit their first arcade fighter. But that does not mean you should ever go back and play it. At the time, there weren't many fighting games in arcades, and therefore no standard. Thus, the original features bland graphics, terrible sound, and clunky, hard-to-master controls. Street Fighter II, however, still offers a smooth and fun gaming experience today. It also features much more visually dynamic and interesting characters than the original. There's a reason it's been remastered a billion times, while the original is only remembered for being the original. Number 5, Knack.
It's blocked. We'll have to go back the way we came.
Listen, we're all for game developers trying to recapture the magic of 90s 3D platformers, but not if it turns out like this. While the concept of a size-shifting hero could have made for an entertaining experience, the game's execution never really realizes its full potential. The enemies and level design are unimaginative, and the gameplay is repetitive. You'll spend your time punching enemies in the face and changing size throughout a level just to end up normal at the end. Repeat ad nauseum. The graphics were also kind of unremarkable, considering it was a launch game for the PS4. 2017's Knack II fared better, but that's not saying much. I don't think there's all that many people waiting for Knack III. Number 4, Rise of the Robots. When gamers in the 90s booted up this robot fighting game, they must have been blown away by the powerful graphics. Just imagine their disappointment when they tried to actually play the damn thing. Not only was this game plagued by limited sound design, but the gameplay itself was objectively terrible. The first problem with this fighting game is there's no character select. Instead, you're stuck with this bland blue character. If you were playing alone, most CPUs could be easily trapped in a corner and pummeled to death. Rise 2 Resurrection was released 2 years later to even worse reviews than the original, and both are now considered as some of the worst fighting games ever made.
Cyborg wins.
Number 3, ShaqFoo. During his pursuit of success in all mediums, NBA legend Shaquille O'Neal teamed up with EA to release this 2D fighting game. Much like his outings in rap and film, it didn't go too well. To be fair, most of the criticism is retrospective, but that doesn't mean it's undeserving. The character designs are unremarkable, the gameplay is extremely frustrating, and most of the time you'll fly through the air struggling to land a hit on your opponent. The story is also completely ridiculous, but I mean, it's called ShaqFoo, so I guess that's forgiven. So we gotta ask, why on earth is there a sequel slated for release in 2018?
Oh, you got some chutzpah, you redneck schmuck.
Number 2, Bubsy 3D. Bubsy. You just couldn't quite make it to the level of Mario or Sonic. While the Bobcat's first 2 games were, okay. The same cannot be said for his 3D outing on PlayStation. The game looked like frickin' garbage, especially compared to Super Mario 64, which was released the same year. This obviously wouldn't have been much of an issue if the game actually was good, but it was slammed for its abysmal camera and sloppy controls, which, for a platformer, need to be spot on. The series was brought back from the dead in 2017, though, with Bubsy, The Woolies Strike Back, and the gaming community responded with a collective meh. Number 1, Sonic Boom, Shattered Crystal. While Shattered Crystal's gameplay is, okay, especially when compared to its terrible companion title, Rise of Lyric, the level design is just so boring that you just cannot enjoy it. The game also forces you to search for collectibles if you want to progress. But each stage has moments where you can't turn back, meaning you must play the same boring levels at least twice in order to beat the game. The story is also a chore to sit through, with terrible dialogue and unskippable cutscenes. All in all, it gives the game a sluggish pace, and Sonic is supposed to go fast, right? Nonetheless, the sequel, Fire and Ice, was released 2 years later, but you'd be hard-pressed to find anybody who actually cared.
Well, it looks like Styx is okay, or what passes for okay in her world.
Do you agree with our picks? Check out these other great clips from WatchMojo and subscribe for new videos every day.